Alright, welcome back, and we're now in turn 15. Not turn 14, because as I said before, I'm not caching every turn at this stage of the game. I've gotten better, but I missed turn 14, so we're going to have to jump forward in time a little bit. As usual, what we'll do is we'll go over events and what's happened, events list, we'll talk about geographical happenings, who's expanding, who's not, and then we'll talk about diplomatic developments, because it's all very busy at the moment as we plan for our first war. So in terms of what we've done in terms of territory, we swept down from 165, reclaimed this province from werewolves, and then came across and took 147, which is Millgate. Quite a valuable province, so our borderline with the Giants is now pretty much established, except for the fact that 137, which Pythium had agreed to leave to us, Utgard had agreed to leave to us, has been attacked by werewolves. Werewolves suck, in the sense that they're hard to knock off once they appear. They came in, they lost one troop throwing off our province defense, and I don't have an army nearby to throw them off. Luckily, I don't think anyone else is planning to do it either, so we'll have a chance to build an army and go over there and take that at some point. I still want to get 159 and 137 at some point, so I'm going to rely on my negotiations to try and keep people off that, knowing that we had Forest of Gila. It's not particularly valuable, but there might be gems there. It's always better to have a province than not. In terms of random events, research is going okay. Got some good magic sites this turn, though. In Green Sea, we found a 4 gem site, 1 death, 2 water, 1 nature, which brings us up to 8 water gem income. And in Night Marsh, we found a 1 water, 1 death site. So that's good. That brings us up to 3 death gems a month, which isn't, it's not superb, but it's something. And we are only on turn 15. So our site searching will continue to develop from there. In terms of other random events, we got to see Patala's God. Now, we knew what it was because, of course, this is an accidental Ascension game, but we can confirm it is in the field. It is a man-eater, which is that glorious beast right there. Scorpion tail the size of a horse. Great. And they charge against barbarians with a couple of Bandar warriors. Now, what you'll see happened here is Bandar warriors rushed forward, started tanking the barbarians, and then the man-eater comes at the back. Now, this is pretty brave. It is at 21 prot, though. 21 prot and tempered flesh. Not from its bless, from its magic, apparently. So, quite tough, but still, they're beating down on it pretty heavily. It started with more than 200 HP, and it's taking chip damage every single time. But it does have Fear 10, and it does have 4 attacks. So it's killing a significant number of barbarians. They've now routed, and it's down to 90 hit points. So, no afflictions. Mission complete. And I think, so they lost all of the Bandar warriors, which is, that hurts. Bandar warriors cost about as much as our Ice Guard infantry, but with considerably lower resource costs. So they're not going to be happy about losing these, but they did kill 31 barbarians and take the province. So they now have this border province with us locked down. We saw Midgard expanding into a province of independent lizard warriors. They got 12 vans. They used some Huskarls. They only lost 6 Huskarls doing it. And I'm going to assume, let's watch it quickly, that's because the Vanir are just too agile for the lizards to reliably hit. Although lizards do have multiple attacks, the Trident and that Bite attack, which does mean they can harass down the Vanir relatively effectively. Javelins also do relatively well, so these Huskarls are good. Yep, so the Vanir come around the flanks. And because they're on the flanks, they're never hit by more than a full square of attacks at a time, which means they're very hard to hit, and they clean them up like lawnmowers. Vanir are very scary. Elves on horses with defense skill that high, hard to match early game until you bring magic out, so we'll need to be careful of that, and we're aware of where they are. Now, of course, because they're glamoured, we can't see them on the map, so we can't see they're part of this force, but we know they're there. Interesting they took this province, though, this lizard province, because I know, and we'll talk about this in diplomacy later, I know Utgard was about 1 turn away from attacking that throne. So hopefully this leads to a potential punch-up between them, which would give us a chance to intervene. And then we expanded in Millgate. We lost 7 troops, killing 31 enemies. That's not great, but it's fine. As I said before, it was an 80 income province, so worth whatever losses we took in the process. In terms of events, so there's a bunch of random attacks happening at the moment because someone claimed the Throne of War. Who claimed the Throne of War? GC claimed the Throne of War. Okay, so General Confusion has claimed the Throne of War, which is a wonderful idea in that it's worth almost nothing and it causes the entire world to be afflicted with random attacks. So, hooray. All of us will now be suffering random barbarian and other attacks for a couple of turns yet. Hope it's worth it, GC. How much does he get for that? He gets blessed troops, get attack skill +1. He has no sacreds apart from his Christlis, which I don't think he's making. So, I guess he claimed it for the one free temple effect, or maybe he claimed it just because he wants to be hated. At the same time, Phlegra, of course, has the Throne of Beasts, which cause beast attacks. So we've got dog attacks, werewolf attacks, barbarian attacks. The world sucks. All because people can't keep their hands off thrones that they really don't need at this point in the game. Other events, one good event in Millgate where we got some growth and luck scales in the province. We got misfortune in Green Sea, nothing really important. Worldwide events, we've got unrest everywhere because of the Throne of War, and there's an arena battle in the arena. So Utgard set a Skrati in werewolf form up against a Vanyal. The Vanyal won, so let's have a look at that one quickly. I have a feeling that this one's just going to have... Unless they're buffing, then a Skrati usually isn't going to win this fight without gear. Okay, so it looks like we're just throwing lightning bolt, are we? Yep. So the elf is just throwing lightning bolts, and unless the Skrati charges in, which it's doing now, there's no hope. Got hit there, down to 37 hit points, but it is profusely bleeding, and it's going to have struggle to hit. Oh, and the Vanyar has been renamed Viking Legolas, so class act there by the Midgard player. Another lightning bolt hit. I don't think this is going to go well. Well, we know it doesn't go well, but we can see why it's not going to go well. You can see that the van doesn't actually do that much damage unless it hits with the broadsword. The hoof attack won't do much, but the broadsword cuts him down. Great, so that was that. And then Orm sent a mounted commander, an ordinary human on a horse, to fight Vanyal. Was never going to happen. And then Pythium sent a mighty champion, a peasant. I'm not sure how they made a peasant a commander, because you can only send commanders into the arena, but they sent a peasant. This guy has no armor, attack skill 7, defense skill 6. He's holding a pitchfork, he has morale 7, and they sent him in against a 245 gold Vanyal, who immediately calls a lightning bolt down on him, which seems a bit overkill for a peasant. That stuns him, he runs away, and if you run away in the arena, you die. So that was the end of Latar the Peasant. So Viking Legolas won in the name of my ex-wife, which is the goddess of Midgard, and was awarded the Scepter of Corruption as a prize. Good prize, Scepter of Corruption, good death booster. I would like that. I don't think he'll give it to me, but good to know that it's out there. And then we had random attacks. We killed the dogs that attacked Atlantis. We lost in Gila. Palisades in Nightmarsh complete. So that's sort of the what has happened. Let's talk infrastructure, planning, and diplomacy. Infrastructure-wise, we've got forts up at 107 and 124. These are our two lizard provinces. They're both now also... One's templed and labbed, and one will be getting that infrastructure as soon as we have the gold for it. It's just creating ice guards at the moment. This fort is upgrading. So we're going to go with lizard shamans in as large numbers as we can, because as far as I'm concerned, they're just better than recruiting... they're better than Tungalix. Their paths are better. Astral nature is just objectively better as options than Water Death because they can wire into communions. They're still sacred, so they're still half upkeep. Small problem is that they're cold-blooded, and we are obviously a cold climate, which means they're going to get tired really, really quickly. But they're going to be communion slaves, and they're not going to be incurring spellcasting fatigue most of the time. They're just going to be sitting there acting as giant batteries. I'll have to look up whether you get cold blood fatigue if you're a communion slave and you're not casting anything. I'll have to find that one out. Anyway, we're bouncing a commander off 157 to confirm what's there. Luckily for us, it looks like a lot of these thrones are filled with phantasmal infantry. Phantasmal infantry are obviously a big problem for most countries because ghosts are very hard to kill with ordinary swords, but Atlantis is one of the only nations which has everyone issued magic weapons, so that should work well for us. But we'll bounce there and see what it's like. We're bringing our main army back across to 145, and if this throne is indeed defended mostly by phantasmals, we'll roll in and we'll take it and secure it. Not sure what throne it is, but hopefully it's valuable. We'll repeat the process down here in 72 if we can, but that might take a while. For the moment, we're just bringing in reinforcements. Because we've now got the big mages up for the first time, we can now start sailing. So the reinforcements can now stream in from the capital to 124, which is sort of a stopping off point, and then they'll be in a position next turn where they can merge up with the primary army and collapse on 157. So that's where we're at there. Other than that, we'll create another army, retake 137, and then hopefully clean up some of this territory around here. But for the moment, it's not my priority. So what is my priority? The priority at the moment is getting ready for the first war, and the first war is going to be with Gath. So Gath has staled a couple of turns, but not all turns. Demise is pumping out what looks like Gittite soldiers and crossbows in most of his provinces, and he's gone really, really, really heavy on a research boom in his capital. This is an army of 60 units, mainly Issacharite sages. So he has very few troops here, and mostly these relatively useless but very good at researching troops. Let's have a look at those quickly. Mufasa, god of Gath, Issacharite sages. Here they are. So an Issacharite sage, 45 gold, can 10% random one path. So useless, useless, useless. But they can still research, and they're incredibly cheap. And I believe, let me just check one more time. 1 recruitment point. So because they have no guaranteed magic, they're only 1 rec point. So you can pump them out 2 per turn, which actually gives you quite a lot of research, particularly if you have magic scales. And it's saving him gold and allowing him to expand elsewhere. He's created a relatively good empire that borders Midgard, that borders Abyssea, that borders Orm. One sec. Sorry about that. So as far as that goes, that army composition's not really well designed to beat us. When you have giant troops, their primary defense is that they have a lot of hit points. When you have a bunch of Atlantean infantry who are smaller than humans but tougher than humans and carry really high damage weapons like halberds, those giants suddenly don't seem like such a good idea. And diplomatically, he sort of has failed to play his cards right at all. He's got no relations with either Orm or Abyssea, who are his 2 other neighbours, so we've basically agreed a 3-way coalition. What's going to happen is probably around turn 15. Sorry, turn 17. Yeah, turn 17, 2 turns from now. We're probably going to launch a beach landing at 81, while Abyssea launches an attack around 59, 47. So this area here is where Abyssea will attack, and Orm will roll in over here. What we're hoping to get out of this, we want to pinch off 81, we want to grab the fortress at 63, and then I'd also like 49 and 73, but that'll come down to how we progress relative to everyone else, and whether Orm can be convinced to stand off. I think this is a good deal for Orm, and I'll say as much, because Orm is in a position to clean up 21, 13, 36, 240, 12. None of this down here is stuff that Abyssea or I are in a position to contest. So he can get out of my way and let me take this northern sort of wedge, which will also keep him separate from Nassigen. Nassigen, meanwhile, is in the best position to make a run at the capital. Whether he'll do that, I don't know. I would ideally love a capital, but this would be a bit of a hyperextension of my empire, very hard to defend, a long way from the water, which is my home environment and where I'm most able to reinforce because I can sail across it and move quicker than I can over land. So Abyssea is in the best position to take Gath itself. We'll see if we can contest it, but ultimately I think just taking these 4 up here would be great. That would also leave us in possession of hopefully 1, 2, maybe 3 thrones. None of them are likely to be particularly valuable because the defenders there are pretty weak, but a throne is a throne. I'm happy to take them. So we'll build up until then. We'll try and clean this throne. If we do, then we can rally up, put our guys on a sailor and land here as soon as everyone agrees to go in. Otherwise, in terms of diplomacy elsewhere, there's conflict between the Bogorussians over here and the Erythians, so we'll track that pretty closely to see how that progresses. GC is, of course, playing a nation that is known for being incredibly weak in the early game. He's taken Sloth, he has no ability to build good troops, so obviously he's going to rush and kill someone else. And in this case, that has turned out to be Erythia. Don't know how the guy does it, but he's planning to do it anyway. Patala is keen not to get involved. They had a slow start, but now that their expander is out and they're starting to clean up some provinces, they're in a better position. I imagine what will happen is if Erythia loses, Patala will be interested in taking more of this water, and I believe Patala already has some of this water. I know that because I'd originally tried to negotiate to come through this province in 88 and go into the water and recruit mages there, but he said, nah, the water's his, it's too valuable, he wasn't going to give it up. Which is unfortunate for us, but he did compensate us by giving us more of this land down the centre, which I suppose is something. We don't know what's happening elsewhere, really, other than that the elves and the giants, true to the law, are close to war. So I know Utgard was planning on taking 237, as I said before. Midgard has now beaten him to the punch and taken it first. I'm not sure if Utgard will immediately attack, but I expect this basically dooms them to a confrontation. What that means is we logically should approach both of them, be nice to both of them, see what their plans are, and then basically pick a side. See who asks for our help and makes the better offer, and then come in on that so that you have a one-sided war and we clean up the other person's land. I don't much mind who the target is in this case. They're both natural continuations of my empire. Our troops probably match up slightly better against Utgard's troops than against the Vanir, but Utgard by this stage of the game may well have Enchantment 5, and if they have Enchantment 5, that means infinite skeletons, and our troops are actually pretty bad at countering infinite skeletons because, well, we're good at killing high-quality troops, not thousands and thousands and thousands of reanimated corpses. So we'll see how that goes. We'll keep an eye on it, but for the moment, Gath is the immediate plan, and I will probably see you again in turn 16 or 17, depending on whether I remember to save 16 or not. Alright, welcome back. It's turn 17, and we're at war. Abyssia went early. We were all going to attack. Well, we were all going to order attacks this turn to land next turn, but Nasigen, through fair means or foul, whether it was an accident or on purpose, I don't know, has gone early and invaded Gath. We'll look at that battle in a moment. We, meanwhile, fought a battle on this throne, which I'll show you in a second. But the story of this turn is going to be overall, we are deploying and trying to land on Gath this turn. So let's go over battles, events, and as usual. There was a battle on the throne. So I scoured this out last turn. I bounced a commander off it. And we just sent in, we've got one mage who's got a couple of water gems, but really that's not going to be the crux of this offensive. What we're relying on is this big, solid line of infantry, a couple of thousand frogs. The bone armor troops are faster and so advance first, but that's fine because, as you can see, they basically melt these phantasmal troops on contact. Any hit is an instant kill. If anything, the crossbows are doing more damage to us than the enemies, our own crossbows, because they actually do enough damage to kill our troops, whereas the enemies do not. The enemy mages do have gems and are summoning up a whole bunch of undead, but not enough undead that it will actually be a problem. We have our prophet here, which means mass banishment, and when you have a Holy 3 doing mass banishment, undead don't really work, so the mages run, and ultimately, the losses from that battle are relatively minor. We lose 5 infantry, killing 97 enemies, so 500 dead frogs, 9,700 dead enemies. I'll take it. Meanwhile, we get to see Nasigen's army because he attacked Abyssia in Toledo. So what Nasigen's got going on here is he's got a couple of Abyssian heavy infantry on the flanks. Abyssian heavy infantry have 17 prots, so they're about equivalent in protection to our troops in neutral scales. And then he's got a whole bunch of, well, human archers and crossbows, and then these Abyssian axe throwers. So axe throwers are human Abyssian crossbreeds, so they have slightly higher strength than humans, slightly higher hit points than humans, but they have relatively low prot, and only average defensive abilities, because this iron shield that they carry isn't particularly great. They're cheap, and they're easy to mass, and they do relatively high damage. They have a throwing axe and an axe. I think what he's doing here is he's relying on masses of cheap infantry that can use relatively high damage attacks to cut down these giants that he's facing, while accepting that every time a giant actually hits one of them, they just die. So you can see here on contact here, the Gittites, being several times larger than a human, when a spear hits an Abyssian, they die, but the Abyssians are able to cut down these Gittites whenever they, presumably land their axes in their, shins or something. So they get cut down relatively effectively, but there are losses on the Abyssian side, including Abyssian friendly fire casualties, because Gittite soldiers are pretty bloody tough. They've got 24 hit points, so more than twice the human average. They still fit 2 to a square, 14 protection, so relatively well armoured, and better skills than their Abyssian opponents. Gittite soldiers are not bad, and give truth to that usual rule that size 3 giants are much better than size 4 giants because you do get 2 to a square. So in terms of casualties, 26 Gittite soldiers and 2 Nuptali spearmen for 26 axe throwers, 3 heavy infantry. This is a good exchange rate for Abyssia, on paper. So Abyssia has lost far less than Gath has, because 25 gold for each Gittite soldier versus 13 for each axe thrower. So Abyssia lost half what Gath did. But really, when you bring 161 units against 29, you'd expect to have a better ratio. So I'd say Gath actually fought relatively well here, despite the fact that this was just a force that happened to be there when they scaled. However, Gath is now in a really tough spot, because by coming into 59, Nasagen has effectively cut their two fortresses off from one another. They can't collapse into this province and reunite because this force is in a position to take one fortress or the other. I expect what will happen is he will move south and put Gath itself under siege, because Gath itself is not defended by much. There'll be PD here, but he can probably beat the PD with what he's got, especially if there's more armies following in behind. I've talked to Ulm. Ulm is going to be launching their offensives this turn, so hooray, we're going to be feeding the late game Blood Nation free land, but hey, that's the price you pay when you sign up with an alliance. We, meanwhile, are landing 160 infantry at 81. And that'll be enough of a force, I hope, to both take it and then to seize Panofia and hopefully Agaria as well. Let's talk about random events now that we've talked about the really important stuff. So we had a couple of these commander joins events. So we had one join in Atlantis, we had one join in Digmore, and one join in Hungry Sea. Now this is not just a commander who joins. They join, but they bring a whole bunch of infantry with them. In this case, archers and heavy infantry. I've just taken them, stuck them on this Ungercock, and they can then sail on that glacier over to 81. So that was really well timed. These troops over here won't be able to join immediately, but I'm going to move them up here, and eventually they'll get shifted over. If you look at my army size, you can see what those events just did. They just spiked. They probably doubled my army. They didn't double the strength of my army, because the troops are all shit. But numbers are numbers, and when we're about to siege a castle, a human does just as good a job, or almost as good a job, as an Atlantean in the best gear possible. So this is actually really good for us in terms of extra troops exactly when we needed them. No magic sites found. Infrastructure is coming online, so we're upgrading the fortress in 107. We've established a laboratory and a temple there and have started recruiting shamans, so that recruitment is now online. And we've got full rate recruitment happening in Digmore, because that fort is now upgraded to a 2CP fort and has a lab and temple on it, which is great. We also have a water fort now labbed and producing Forgiving Fathers, and have for a couple of turns. That's going full rate. Soon what we're going to do is we're going to put a fort up in Sea of Mermaids over here, 68. It's a good province, 140 income. No idea if there's magic sites there. We'll get someone down there to search it eventually. But what we will do is put up a fortress and start recruiting more mages. I'd like not to cannibalize the resources here immediately, because I'd like to still be able to produce coral troops up there. They're not as good as ice troops, but you know, coral armor is poisonous, so if we end up fighting someone who has lots of animals or wolves or whatever, and they attack with like their body itself, they'll take poison damage from that coral gear, which is useful. I don't envisage fighting Ulm, but Ulm is obviously the case where that sort of armor is really, really good. The other is Relay, but they're not in this game, so hooray for us on that one. So that's our infrastructure plan, that's our invasion plan. Other than that, we'll just keep recruiting big mages and troops, keep pouring on the reinforcements while we watch up here. Interestingly enough, so Midgard still holds that throne that they held before. Utgard is, however, apparently negotiating with them over that. This is basically turning out to be this game Balkans. These guys are constantly posturing, they fight small limited skirmishes, and then they back off. So we'll see if that escalates into World War I, or whether they keep doing the small skirmish sort of stuff. If there's something that might embolden Utgard, it's that he can see that werewolves have locked down this Midgardish fort, and I don't think Midgard's that large. I actually don't think Midgard is a particularly large power at the moment, because we can see one fort here which is under siege. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, let's say 11, 12, 13, 14. We know they don't have up here, we know they probably don't have that throne. They may only be 14 or 15 provinces. That's Midgard itself. I can't see forts down here. Maybe there are forts up here, but they can't be particularly well developed at this point. Admittedly, we only have 4 forts, and we're not yet constructing another one, but like, they may be the smaller power when compared to Utgard. Now, Utgard has 100 barbarians locking down this fort over here, so neither of them are having a good time. And the events say that we are going to have a barbarian attack of our own in Soteris soon. So it's this province here. It's 148 income. That's really annoying. That's really bloody annoying, because the province that we will lose to barbarians is worth more than the provinces we will take from Gath. But we need to take these in war now before our allies take them. We can always come back and reclaim our own area now. We're claiming the throne. The throne is it's a level 1, but it's 2 astral pearls a turn and 1 dominion, so may as well claim it and start bolstering our dominion out this way. One good thing about the fact that we random this absolutely ludicrous 10 dominion strength god that you would never buy in a million years normally is that each of these Dominion checks is actually really valuable because they're 100% default checks. So we should be able to spread our Dominion relatively effectively. Anyway, that's the turn for now. Nothing too dramatic other than the fact that we are launching this offensive. We'll see how it goes, and more importantly, we'll see how Abyssea's offensive on Gath's capital goes when we come back in turn, I think it's turn 19 is the next one I have.